This video is from my series that walks you through how to build a career in film and television production. Okay, so what we're also going to do this week is we're going to find the executive assistants or the associates or the director or the PA at the entry-level job who might connect with you. We built our list of executives, executive producers, development staff, writers, directors, and so on. Now we're going to see if we can figure out who their assistants are, or if there's an assistant who works with the executive on our hit list. We're going to add them to our low tier. Again, this goes back to you're probably not going to find access to the top executives you listed, but those people all have staff or assistants who are looking for new people to network with. Exploit that opportunity. Assistants, associates, directors, and PAs are all looking for opportunity to expand their network out the same as you. And when I say director, in this particular example, I'm talking about a director of development. I'm talking about a creative executive. Those kinds of jobs, those kinds of people, they're looking to expand out their network. They're young, they're early in their career, or they're early in their vertical that they're currently working in, and they want to build out their network the same as you. Take advantage of that opportunity. Now is the time. When you're in your 20s or you're early on as you're leveling up, this is the opportunity to do that. Okay, that being said, in the work we've done so far, we've looked at people at the high and the mid-level that make shows on our admired list. Now we want to take a look at the low-level people who we want to network with. When I say low-level, that means they're starting their careers out, they've leveled up recently, or they're advancing in their careers. They are slightly ahead of your progression in the industry. When I say low level, that doesn't mean that they're less important than the mid and the high level people. They're just at a different level in the pecking order of seniority, responsibility, pay grade, all those things that go with it. But they're good people to get connected to. Once someone's gotten into the system, they will get referrals over and over and over. If there's a ton of work going on and people in these jobs can only do one at a time, there's a possibility they could make a referral for you. They won't be your sponsor in the room, but they could be a referral. And that's how people get hired in this business, is by referral. So wherever the referral can come from a mid-level person, from a hiring manager, from a very senior person, or from a low-level person, it doesn't really matter. We're just looking to build a network so we can get referral from one job to the next. That's our goal. So don't discount the low-level people, and we're going to go in and take a look at who we're going to pick up and who we're going to want to put on our list, and how we do that research. That's also important. This exercise is applicable for everybody. It doesn't hurt to add people to your list, to network with all levels and all different kinds of people in the business, but this is especially relevant for people who are starting in the entry level. So the people we're going to target, they're easy to get to, they're an easy ask, they're connected to the industry in some form or fashion, and they know the executives who are looking for people. So it doesn't hurt to get connected. So we have to take this entry-level category with a little more nuance when we're picking up names. So some of these names might turn into something and some may not. You just have no way of knowing. So it doesn't hurt to add them to our list and fire off a DM to see if we can strike up a conversation and get connected to these folks. Remember, the informationals we're doing here with these people on the low level are from the perspective of how did you break into the business, or how did you break into the level that you're currently at. It's less about their career path and how they got to where they are. The truth is, they probably don't view themselves as being where they want to be. So the conversation is going to be different. We're not going to say, hey, buddy, how'd you get into your career and how'd you get to this level? They're going to look at you like, the fuck are you talking about? I'm an assistant. I'm an indentured servant. I don't love the work I'm doing. I'm just doing it because I want to move up. So we have to be nuanced about the conversation we're having. The conversation has to be relevant to their place in the business. And also, the likelihood of you including these folks into your social circle is a lot higher than it is with business relationships that you would find in the mid-level and top-tier folks. So Be social with these people. If it's right and it feels like you connect with someone in some way that they're interesting on a professional level, then have drinks, have coffee, whatever. Okay, so again, we're working from our 20 most admired list. On this example, I'm going to show you how I do the research for a TV show and a feature. So let's clarify what assistants we're looking for. We're looking for assistants in production, also called PAs, production assistants. We're looking for assistants to executives. Most of that will come from the trades, likely not going to be in IMDb. And we're going to look for assistants within particular departments. So let's take our file and let's add Mindhunter and Deadpool 2. That's the TV show and the feature we're going to take a look at. That's what we're going to pull research for. So again, we're going back to IMDb. Let's add a few spaces here. Mindhunter. And then I want to pull up the entire cast and crew. I want to scroll down to the crew. Scrolling. God, this is fucking huge cast. Okay, now I'm going to do a quick find rather than having to pick through all of these pieces and read all these names. When I do this, I get 183 results. Obviously, this is not applicable. That's an actor. But if we scroll down to the next categories, here's an example of an assistant that is a title within a covered category in IATSE. IATSE is the union that governs all of the crew on a particular TV show or a movie. As someone who's leveling up and as someone who's starting out in their career, you're not going to find access to IATSE jobs. It's all going to be non-union until you make a connection, until you accumulate enough days or hours or whatever the terms are for becoming a new member of a guild or a new member of a union, whatever those terms are. And until you accumulate enough time to satisfy those terms, you're not going to be able to do union jobs. So we're going to be looking for non-union jobs. Assistants in some parts of the union, there are covered jobs that have assistant in the title. This is a good example of one. Here's another example of a whole bunch of them. These are director's assistants. They are all DGA covered categories, and those are not available to entry-level people. There is a training program within the DGA that you can get connected with, but the first step is to get connected, and then we can learn a little bit more about that training program in time. Not going to cover it here. It's a completely different subject, but just know that something like 10,000 people apply every year. Of those, you have to fill out a form. If you fill it out correctly, you go to the next stage. That gets whittled down to 1,200. So 9,000 of them don't do it correctly. 1,000 do. Of those 1,000, that gets whittled down. Taking a test, you go in, you take an exam. They want to see what kind of personality you are, whether you're insane, you can think, whatever. I'm not sure what they're looking for, but you take a test. That gets whittled down to 100. Those 100 get interviewed by people at members of the guild. And then from that 100, they will accept like 15 or 20 people. Those were the terms last time I checked. It's been a long time, but nonetheless, the training program hasn't really changed. The point here is there's 10,000 applications, out of which 20 people, I'm being generous, get accepted into the program. So there are other ways to get into the guild. That's one way. Anyway, the DGA, these are assistant director jobs. They're all covered jobs. We're not going to get into those assistant jobs. Don't get confused by the word assistant that is in these titles that we had posted in the first week. Production assistant, directors, writers, producer, casting, art department assistants. They're all assistants. The name, the word assistant is in them. It's also in other covered categories. So we can't just blindly choose assistant and put them on our list. What we're looking for are production assistants or department assistants. So within the categories, art department, here's a good example of one. Assistant set decorator, that's a covered category. Assistant art director, covered category. Same with the prop master, and so on. But the art department assistant, that's not a covered category, or it wasn't. That's becoming more. Some shows are, some shows aren't, but I'm still going to try to connect to John. That's probably a good name we want to pick up and put on our list for Mindhunter. He probably was a local. I believe this show was shot in Pittsburgh, but nonetheless, we're going to take a look and see where John might exist. We might be able to connect some information with him when we get into LinkedIn or other places, Facebook and so on, to find out where he actually lives and where he works. We're looking for local market connections. Assistant prop master, again, covered category. Set deck, covered. Art director, covered, prop master, and so on. So I'm just looking for the assistants in the department. This might be a covered category. It may not. If it begins with assistant, that's sometimes a tell, but we can go take a look and see if Jesse is a member of IATSE or the IA. We look in sound, we're not going to find anything in sound. Those are all covered categories. Special effects, probably not going to find anything there either. We scroll down, CGI, assistant editor, covered category. First assistant camera, all of these guys are covered categories. First assistant, chief lighting technician. Second assistant camera, camera assist, first assist. Casting, here we go. Extras casting assistant. This is one we could, if we're interested in getting into this grind, into extras casting, make a connection there. If I'm a writer, director, actor, producer, something in above the line I'm striving for, this might be an interesting person to make a connection with, to build out your Rolodex and get connected with people in the industry. All of these assistants. In this area, the extras casting people, they're all non-covered categories, but just understand, these are really low-level jobs, and extras casting is sort of an adjunct to physical production. It's not a great way to find a connection or get connected to production, but it might be someplace to start. It would also be an interesting get. I would probably pick up all of these names that have extras or casting assistant after them and go do some research about them and figure out where they live, if they're in our local market, if it's someone worth connecting to, if it's someone who's local that we can connect with. It's absolutely worth putting on our list. Then we get into wardrobe. Assistant costumer, covered. What we're looking for here is a costume assistant or costume department. Here we go. Wardrobe assistant. That's this one. These are all covered categories that are members of the IA. But this one is not. Wardrobe assistant. These are the department assistants we're looking for. Editorial, assistant editor, and so on. Those are all covered categories. Assistant location manager. Those could be interesting people to connect to. Although what you're looking for is a location assistant, not the assistant location manager. These are covered, depending on where you are in the East, they're covered by the DGA. On the West Coast, they're covered by the Teamsters. So these are covered categories, but sometimes you can find a connection with location assistants. So I'm going to put Jacob on my list. And then I'm just going down and I'm looking through the other departments where we'll find other assistants. So here we go. Assistant to the producer. Assistant to an assistant to the director, assistant writers, those kinds of people we're looking for. Payroll clerks, don't waste your time. Completely different part of the business. Second assistant accountant. That's specifically a finance person. If you want to talk to them, fabulous. If that's what you're interested in, go check it out. The production assistants, executive assistant. This right here, this is an interesting person to get to talk to. You want to try to connect with this woman. Here's another one. Nathaniel Peters. I'm skipping these for no reason other than I'm trying to save time, but I would include all of them. I wouldn't skip any of them. They're production assistants. It tells you, other than the photo double, well, this person Tyler has a photo double credit and stand-in and production assistant. This is an example of someone who probably started out as a production assistant and then worked their way up into becoming a stand-in or utility because they might have acting aspirations or something to that extent, so they can get into the guild or so they can get connected to that part of the business and be out doing that work every day. Who knows? This is an interesting person who might be worth talking to, and I would absolutely connect with this one. This is someone who figured out how to get themselves from a PA into working as some other stand-in kind of a job. So you can just sit here and we can pull all these different assistant jobs. Assistant to Charlize Theron. Here's another one. You want to connect with this one. This is this is an assistant to an actor. I'm not sure what she did on this show, but nonetheless, that's an example. I've given you examples of a lot of different categories to skip, accounting, and so on. But these ones, you might want to pick up and do some research. So what kind of research do we do? So give you an example. Sarah, where was Sarah? I'm looking for Sarah because she was, let's just do it this way. All right, here we go. I'm going to click into Sarah because I want to take a look deeper into her credits and find out what she does. What has she done? If she has just this one credit from Mindhunter, I'm going to skip her. I'm probably not going to want to connect to her. But you can see that she's also done some other things. She hasn't really moved up. She's pretty consistently stayed an assistant to actors, which is fine, but someone who might be interesting to talk to. It's the ones on a list who might have 1 or 2 credits, and those are the ones we don't want to go deeper into and trying to connect to. Here's a person who has started as a production assistant, kind of worked their way up into an assistant to a producer. Then they worked as a production assistant again, and then they made their way into the accounting office. Maybe decided they didn't like it and they came back as a PA. This isn't a person we'd want to talk to, or at least put on our list of people we want to talk to. Let's go take a look at her and see if she's moved up. And she has. She started out as a PA. She moved into assistant to the showrunner. That's someone who's moved up. We want to put them on our list of people to talk to. This is the kind of research we're doing about these individuals to find out if they've left the business or if they stayed connected to it. The ones who have left will have 1 or 2 credits and it'll fall off a cliff. This is probably one I wouldn't talk to. It looks to me like Zach made their way into production as a PA and then found his way into accounting. And you can see that by looking at some of his credits. Oh, I stand corrected. It looks to me like Zach is someone who made their way into production originally in camera and as an electrician, and decided, or as a grip actually, and had decided to move into work as a PA. Started out on shorts. You can see they're all listing as shorts here. So not really working in the professional part of the business, working more in all the free, low tier, the kind of work that anybody can get, the stuff you find online. Made his way into Mindhunter, but in 2019, that ended for him. And he hasn't really moved up. Maybe he bailed, maybe he didn't. Who knows? This is an example of someone who I'd probably take off my list and not connect with. Or not even put on my list, maybe. Maybe what I might do is actually go through these names and click into them first before they actually put them on my list. So let's go look up some more research for Deadpool. Makeup, not applicable. Production management, all these PAs I would take a look at. In this case, there's just one, Justin J. Nelson. It looks like Justin has pretty much stayed a production assistant into 2020. He might be someone I would take a look at and put on my list of people I want to try to connect to. You can see in features, there's a lot fewer of these people, a production assistant and visual effects. Probably someone I'd try to connect with. See if I can learn a little bit about them. VFX production assistant. Here's another one. If you're interested in VFX. If you're interested in physical production, stay out of post, stay out of visual effects. They're not applicable. They won't get you connected to the area you want to work. If you're interested in those areas, then you should focus on those specifically for them. Technical directors, not applicable. Studio assistant, I don't know what that is. Probably not someone I'd connect with. I'm looking for physical production jobs that have to do with connecting in an area that I want to wind up working. Visual effects. This was a huge visual effects show, so the VFX area is going to be giant, and there's going to be a ton of them. Stunts, all covered categories. They're all Screen Actors Guild players. Assistant stunt coordinator, covered category. Same. Camera, first assistant, all covered categories. Tons of camera, animation, casting. Here's some people we want to make a connection with. Okay, wardrobe, assistant costume, all covered categories. Costume department assistant, that is a department assistant. That is not a covered category. That's a good person to try to connect to. Editorial, all assistants. Location, maybe these two, if you're looking at locations or you want to make a connection in this area, probably not a bad idea for these two. I'd put them on my list. In the music, all covered categories by the AFM. And very little of that work happens in the United States anymore. Okay, here we go. Key production assistant. There you go. Good one to connect to. Or at least try to connect to. Probably on set is what he did. Or she did. I don't know if that's a male or a female. But anyway, probably an on-set job in second unit. Assistant accountant, production assistant. Here we go. And then it gets kind of repetitive. It's kind of the same as it was in television. Same thing. You're going to click on these people and you're going to find out what they're doing now. Here's a great one if you're a writer or director, production assistant in development. This could be an interesting one. So we're going to click into Zach and find out what Zach is doing. All right. So looks like he was a PA in development. Who knows what that is? He probably has an aspiration of being a writer-director, is my guess. And he made his way into editorial, working as an editorial assistant, coming up as a post-production coordinator. So he's knocked around for a little bit. Looks to me like he's moved out of physical production. Maybe after this 2018 on Deadpool, he's made his way into doing producing and directing or working as a development executive somewhere in town. So he might be someone really worth connecting to if your goal is something in this area. Let's see if we can get it to tell us. Assistant. Okay, there we go. Another one. I'd probably put Liam on my list of people to connect to. These assistants to Simon Kimberg, I would try to connect with them. or see where they've gone from this point on. Simon Kinberg was the executive producer and probably the writer. That's Simon's background. He came up as a writer. I think he started on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, was his first writing assignment, if not his first, very early on. But I would definitely connect to these two people and find out if you can build a relationship with these people or some kind of connection. So that's essentially the research we do for the assistants in both physical production, in features in television, and also in see if we can find people in development. And the way we connect to those assistants in development is through the example I gave you of using Simon Kinberg and their assistants to connect to him. They may not be working for Simon at this point. Those jobs typically last a year to a year and a half. It's very uncommon they last longer, but I would click into those people and find out what they've done over the past couple years. So when we're researching these assistants, we want to click into them and make sure they're still in the business. The way we know they're still in the business is they're active on something that's relatively current within the past year or two. If they're active, we want to connect with them. We want to try to figure out how we can connect on what social channels, and then figure out how to strike up a conversation with those folks. If they're not still in the business and it looks like they've moved on, we don't include them. We also don't include the people who might be on location. Maybe you're in Los Angeles, you're looking to connect with people in LA, but a show may go off to Pittsburgh or Atlanta or Detroit or Chicago or Florida or wherever the movie goes. And a lot of the assistants get picked up locally. Depending on the size of the show, they get picked up locally. If those people don't live in Los Angeles, there's no reason for us to be connecting with them. So we don't want to connect if they're not still in the business, and we don't want to connect if they're local or regional and not local to where we're currently living. People come and go from production. There's a lot of turnover. The turnover is really high in the assistant jobs, so we don't want to waste our time connecting with people who don't exist in the business anymore. If you can't tell based on their IMDb or any other kind of research, put them in the bottom of the list of people who you might want to try to connect with, and just figure out whether or not they're still working in production. If they are, connect with them. If they're not, then move on. Remember, this is digital. There's no cost except your time to connecting with people on some social channel. It's worth your time. So we're adding these names, the low tier people, underneath the top tier and then underneath the mid tier. So the top tier on Deadpool is going to be Simon Kinberg and Lauren Schuler Donner, and the mid tier are going to be these people, the director and the writers. And in fact, David is not a low tier person. He's pretty tough to get to, but nonetheless, I put him in the mid tier. He's not a mid tier guy, but he's probably someone we might be able to get to. I leave a space so I can tell who's high tier, mid tier, and then who's in the lower tier. So we include them in a separate section just to help us identify who they are and what level they're at, what tier they're at. And that's it. The job here is to lift the low tier, include them in our list, and to segment them out from the group of high and mid tier that we want to try to get to. Once we're done with adding the assistants, we've completed our research of the high and the mid tier executives we want to try to connect with, plus the low level tier. The next step is to add the details about how we're going to connect with them on social, phone, mail, however you're going to try to connect with these people. We're now going to go do some research about how to actually fill those pieces in. How are we going to do it when it comes time to connecting with these people?